Frank Oelschlager, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Very well. I found you. I posted on I won't say what group it is, I guess, but I posted on a group about wanting more business people to talk to, and you hit me up, and I'm very excited.
Yeah,
Um,
awesome.
can you give us a little insight about your background and like what led you up to where you are today?
Sure. I'll give you the really quick version, and then we can drill down in more detail wherever you want. So I've spent the last 30 years as a serial entrepreneur. Kind of going back a little bit before that, I did college, went into the United States Army, came out of the Army, did commercial job. First thing was working on SCADA systems, which stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. What that means in practice is automating hydroelectric power plants and things like that. So that was really a lot of fun. And I feel like I did some really good projects and did some social goods. And did that and went through a couple other jobs. But things really started, I think, for me in 1995 when I started my first software company. Did that 4 times. Sold most of them. One was kind of a fire sale. That was a dot-com boom and bust, here. Just kind of kept learning as I went, building these software companies out. I sold the last one to SAP in 2009. Was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And a buddy called me up and said, why don't you come do this kind of unique kind of consulting that we're doing. And I thought, well, I'll do that for a couple of years. And then I'll go do a new startup in a product company. That was 10 years ago. And I'm still doing the consulting because it's really a lot of fun. I get to go in and solve other people's problems instead of having my own.
Is it less stress to solve other people's problems than your own?
It is much less stress to solve other people's problems than to solve your own. I actually had a CEO tell me once, I took him out to lunch and I was telling him what I thought he should do. And he goes, that's all fine. He goes, but you get to go home at the end of the day and I have to live with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if a consultant also helps business people too, because if they're under a lot of stress, I mean, we often don't make the best decisions while under stress.
That's absolutely true. Yeah. So it's good to have, it's funny when I was doing product, I always kind of thought of consultants as, kind of like, you just stay, out over there. But when I switched sides to become a consultant, I realized that, consultants have a lot of value to offer because they are an independent eye looking in, and they don't have the emotion or the politics or the history associated with things. So, they can actually be very clear-eyed, very, very objective.
So your company is 10 Mile Square Technologies. Is that correct? The consulting company? And are you the founder, co-founder?
No, so they started the company. So one of my business partners, a guy named Alden Hart, tried to get me to join earlier, but I was still finishing the transaction with SAP. So I had to finish that first. And then they tied me down for a couple of years, what I call indentured servitude, post-acquisition indentured servitude.
Yep.
And, so I did that. And as soon as I was ready to get out of there, I called him back and I said, you still want to do this? And he said, yeah. So I came and I joined the company as a principal and as a partner, but I don't get the co-founder status because.
Oh, that's okay. It seems like you're a very senior member based on, I've seen it like on the website, there's a lot of posts, like actually really useful posts. If you want to check out 10 Mile Square Technologies, they have your posts aren't sometimes I see websites and their posts are just advertising their own services, but you guys actually have like pretty useful information on there.
We try to put out stuff that people can use. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. So what summoned you to become a consultant? Like what is, I guess I'm wondering like why you were so motivated to do this specifically.
So it was an interesting transition for me. I wasn't actually really motivated to do it in the beginning. I needed to have, I had just spent 25 years or something like that, doing startups back to back. And, for people that have done a software startup before, they will immediately know what that means. It's 15 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week. You just go, 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 right? My hair turned this color when I was like 32.
It suits you. No, it's good. It's good.
Right. I burned it out fast. So it's a pretty tough lifestyle. And so after the last one, I just thought, I need to step back. I had a couple other things going on in my life. My mom was dying of cancer. Sorry, I'm not turning up. I have a peanut in my throat. My mom was dying of cancer, and I was kind of going through a nasty divorce. So I was like, I just need something easier right now. I can't do another startup. I don't have the energy for it. And so I got, back with my friend Alden, and, we talked about it, and I agreed to join them. And it's funny because internally I thought, I'll just do this for a couple of years because I'm a product guy. I'm a startup guy, I'm a growth guy, I'm a product guy. Consulting is all fine and dandy, good work-life balance. But, this is not really what I do. Like I said, that was 10 years ago. and so what happened is as I got into it, I realized, I guess I started to realize a whole bunch of things all at once. And one is that you constantly learn. You're exposed to new things all the time. When you're building one product, you still learn things, but you're sort of on a narrow track, right? You kind of got the blinders on and the laser beam focus. And when you're doing management consulting, and technology management consulting and even just pure technology consulting, you're exposed to new things all the time. And so you're constantly learning, you're constantly growing, and you're constantly helping people. And that turned out to be a really, really good combination for me. I really like that. I'm sort of an information sponge. And so, it worked out really well. And I don't know what else to say about that. It just seems like a good fit. And, here I am still doing it. I've toyed with going out and starting a new company a few times here and there, but nothing has had sort of a strong enough emotional magnet for me to pull the trigger and jump and go do it.
Yeah, technology is like that. You're constantly learning. I call myself, I guess, a hobby coder. Like I'm not serious enough about it to get a job and do it for 8 hours a day, but it's fun sometimes. I do some data stuff, and I just found that like if you want a career where you're constantly learning, get into coding because it never stops. Even if you're just focusing on one language, like it's being updated constantly, and you can't really focus on one language most of the time anyway. I mean, you're constantly pairing them up and everything's changing. And so, with a technology startup, I imagine that you're just going from like one type of technology to a completely different type of technology that you have to relearn. And in a matter of time, like in quite a short period of time, I would assume.
Yeah, I would. So, so at the level that, I don't have to like learn a new language or something. I don't want to. We have, so my company has about 19 people in it. And so, if we have run into a situation and we need somebody who's an expert in React or JavaScript or something like that, I've got somebody in our team that can be that person. So I don't really dive down to that level of detail anymore, but, you show me a cloud architecture and, I can help you out on that, pretty quickly. You show me how your team is organized. And I can help you sort that out. You tell me that your processes aren't working or you don't have any, I can jump in and help you with that. So it's, part of it is recognizing where other people on your team are going to be able to add value faster. And sometimes, for less money than if it were me trying to learn how to do it. But we also spend a lot of time in my company. We give everybody 10 days of training days. So you have the ability to go and be, expert in, various things. It's important that we're kind of out there on the front edge of things and we really know what's going on with technology.
So when you walk into a company for the first time as a consultant, what is commonly the biggest, I guess, inefficiency that you encounter?
So that depends a little bit on what's been going on, but I'd say usually the biggest inefficiency is lack of alignment between different people. So I see this all the time, and usually when I get called in, it's because something's not working right. And you start talking to people, and sales doesn't trust product management doesn't trust development doesn't trust management. I mean, there's just all this stuff, and it's because people are trying to accomplish different objectives. They're not communicating, really fluidly about what's important to them, what they're trying to do. I'll give you a quick example. I went into a company. It's a public company. It's a software as a service company. Probably all I should say, because if I say where they are, they might.
That's okay.
And the product managers had a bonus plan in place that was 100% in direct conflict with the bonus plan that the engineering managers had.
Oh.
And so they were all fighting with each other.
Yeah.
And they didn't understand, it was really a situation of, so-and-so doesn't know what they're doing. They're making bad decisions. So-and-so, isn't delivering on what I asked. Right. And when you break it down, when I finally, got down to that level with them and figured it out, I was like, well, why don't you guys try to figure out why the other person is acting this way? Right. I couldn't be the person to reveal, the bonus plan to each other, because, that's sensitive, management, information. And I tried to get the management to straighten it out, and they were reluctant to address it at the time. So I got the people in the room and I said, why don't you try to figure out why the other person is behaving the way they are? And I spent about 45 minutes in the room with them, mediating, maybe leading the conversation in certain directions. And they finally figured out that, they had incentives that were causing them to behave in this conflicting manner. Mm-hmm. And so then the next thing was to figure out, okay, so how do we align you guys so that, you can both get your bonuses and be on the same team, right? And so, a lot of challenges like that.
Yeah. Wow. It's the thing, when you first said that, what initially struck me was, I think misalignment is both a corporate issue. So it's an issue for interpersonal organizations that rely on a lot of different people, but also like misalignment is one of the issues that I deal with myself as well. Part of me wants to eat a donut and the other part of me wants to go lift weights, and those are clashing. And I do wonder whether that misalignment originates. I'm not sure about this. I don't want to, put anything out there, because I don't know if I believe this fully myself, but I do wonder if the misalignment starts at the top, where the CEO doesn't quite have a clear direction of his priorities, and maybe it kind of trickles down to and manifests itself in like the engineering team and the sales team having issues or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, it 100% starts at the top every single time, right? You can all. So it's kind of funny. Actually, I think I wrote a blog on this one too. You ever watch that show with that guy Caesar? It's called The Dog Whisperer here in the United States. I've seen like one or two episodes. Okay, so that's all you really need to see it, because they're all the same. And the answer is always that the dog is not doing something wrong. You as the owner, as the master of the dog, are sending it conflicting and, unclear signals. And so it's behaving that way because it's confused. And it's your fault that it's confused, right? So it's always the master's fault. And, the Caesar spends the show, training the human on how to interact with their dog properly. Mm-hmm. It's the same in software. I've had to take more than one C-level person out to lunch and say, you're the problem. And I don't put it like that because nobody reacts well to that. But, you have to kind of deliver the message that, you got to change your behavior here a little bit because, nobody else is going to get on board while you're doing this. And it comes down to like really, really silly, stupid stuff. And I'm sure everybody in the technology industry who has ever done a startup will just, do one of these when they hear this because they've all lived it before. And that's CEO out doing a field trip, talking to customers, talking to partners, potential investors, all the things, what a CEO should do. And somebody says something to them. And the next thing you know, they're on the phone with their favorite developer saying, oh, I've got this big meeting with so-and-so tomorrow. Can you just put this one feature, on the home screen, so that I can demo it? It doesn't have to work, but, I just, and the next thing there's all this unfinished work. There's buggy stuff, stuff that's, just and the product starts to kind of bloat a little bit, and it doesn't really have the focus that it should. That's never happened before in the real world, right? But it's stuff like that. Stuff like that happens all the time, and CEOs don't realize what a huge problem that actually creates for having a quality product that all the customers that have already bought it can use, and having a solid demo so that, when, your salespeople are doing a demo, there's not some random button they've never seen before that doesn't do anything or doesn't do what they expect.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like a huge issue.
Yeah. But it's common. I see it all the time. I've lived it. I've been it. I've done it.
You've learned from your mistakes.
I've learned.
So your company, I read that you help technology companies get their products on the market. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. No. What does that usually involve? So at what stage in their process are they usually at when they call you up?
So this is the beauty of what we do. We get called in at all different stages. Sometimes we get called in at the beginning. So CTO will call us and say something like, hey, I've got all this data and, I'm getting pressure to add machine learning to the product, but nobody on my team really, knows how to do that or what a machine learning, data pipeline looks like. Can you guys come in, help engineer that, and then imprint that on my organization? And so, that's right, kind of at the beginning. And so we'll do that. Other times, they'll come in and say, we've got this, system that we built 15 years ago, this product is out on the market, and now it's getting creaky and we need to modernize it, but we need to do that while our current team is still working on it. How do we do that? And so, we can come in and help do that. Sometimes we get called in after somebody's already tried to do something and it failed. And then we're trying to fix it. Probably one of the coolest things that we've done is we built a robot for a big company that's actually very cool. The robot moves around all by itself in an open space and can draw on the floor with 1 millimeter precision, and very complex and intricate shapes.
What is its real life use case besides great art?
Its real life use case was for the creation of precision patterns in flooring. So think about like when you walk into fancy lobbies and, there's like some kind of inlay with like their logo, cut into the floor with different colored tiles and stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that was like an R&D project that we did for that company.
You guys, so that's interesting because I thought for some reason I got the impression that you were just doing SaaS, but you're actually doing physical hardware as well, which is
so yeah. So we're full stack and we're full stack and we're full life cycle. We have 3D motion control. So 3D printing is catching on. And there's a whole class of like consumer grade 3D printers that cost, less than $1,000. Probably about 40% or those ish have either software or hardware that we wrote.
Wow. Can I ask, do you have IP on that? Do you get revenue from
so we don't. It's actually funny. The patent laws here, our name are on a patent for some of our clients, but we always do our work for hire. So we do not get any money from that. We did create some very specific 3D motion control algorithms that we were going to patent, but we were too slow. And in the United States, they changed the patent laws a few years ago from first to invent to first to file.
Oh.
So even though we had invented this, because we didn't file the patent quickly, somebody else filed a patent that was too close to ours for us to be able to file it, right? So, we lost out on that opportunity. On the other hand, US software patents are almost worthless at this point as a result of changes in the laws and also precedent that's been set in court. So it's, people ask me now, I was like, should I file a patent on this piece of software? And I say, sure, if you want to spend $50,000 and then not be able to do anything with that.
And China can just, I've read briefly something about the way the patenting system in Hong Kong works. And it seems like they ignore all US patents and then just do whatever they want. I'm not sure if that's quite how it is, but it seems, I don't know. They don't seem to really give much precedent to US patents anyway.
So patent theft is a problem. Intellectual property theft, I should say, is a problem. It's a problem in China. We talk about it a lot about China, but it's a problem in other places too. It's just that we don't have a common reciprocal legal framework with countries like China to mutually enforce international patents, right? And the end result of that is that, companies in China will steal your patents and, do stuff all the time. On the other hand, there must be some way to control this properly, because otherwise there's no way Apple would do so much in China that they're doing, right? Because I don't know. I've never been inside Apple, but I just figure almost everything they do revolves around some kind of unique intellectual property.
Now, I want to go back to staffing for a second, because this question keeps popping into my mind and it's not leaving me alone. So you mentioned a little earlier that I also want to see you write an article with the headline "Employees are like dogs," because I think that would be excellent. But
I would never write that.
No. It would be terrible. It would be You would probably get a lot of traction from it, and it wouldn't be the good kind of traction. But
yeah, I think the way I wrote the blog just about the dog whisperer was probably as close as I'm ever going to come to that, because otherwise the headline would be. I guess it would be managers shouldn't have pets.
That's a good one. I like that. But what I was wondering is, so you said that the managers, it's the way the managers are treating the employees, and it's not like the employees are doing something wrong necessarily, but there have to be cases when your employee just isn't doing the right thing, like they're not a good fit for the company. And how often do you see companies where they should just be firing employees that they're not firing?
So unfortunately, I see it more often than not. But I'm gonna change the nature of your question a little bit, because it's not necessarily that somebody should be fired, although there are cases of that. But it's more the case of somebody is in the wrong job. They're in the wrong role. They've been given the wrong responsibility. They've been promoted into a job they've never done before, and they haven't been given any training or support or mentoring or coaching, and so they're floundering, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I come in, the first thing that I try to do with these people is give them the mentoring and the coaching and the support that they need to be successful in the job that they have been placed in. And if they're receptive, if they're coachable, that's usually pretty successful. And, in my conversations with their bosses, in the C-level folks, so, although every now and then it is a C-level folk that is in that situation. My conversation with them is, this person has been put in an unfair position. You have to forget about everything that you've judged them for up to date. I'm going to work with them, and in a month, they're going to basically be in a much better place than they are now, or you should find something else for them to do in the company, right? Sometimes you run into people who are not coachable, and then they have to exit the company.
Yeah.
And sometimes it becomes obvious to everybody, and they leave voluntarily. They go, say, okay, I'm going to go find a job, and it's a good, peaceful ending. Sometimes the CEO is like, well, I've wasted enough money on them already, and I'm going to terminate them effective immediately. And It's like, we take it down a notch, but people react the way they want. As a consultant, you only have so much horsepower, so much vote, right? And the people are going to do what they're going to do. You can advise them, but you're not actually the one, pulling the trigger on things. So you don't have full set of control over what happens next. So you just try to engineer the most positive outcomes for everybody that you can. Mostly it works out. Sometimes it doesn't work out too good. But usually
sorry.
I was going to say, usually when it doesn't work out, it's because the person wasn't willing to go for the ride and was going to get left behind anyway.
Yeah. I have a two-part question here. I guess the first question is that you mentioned coachability. And so I used to be I worked at a job when I was like 22, and I worked in the weed industry, and we would roll like I did a few things, but in one of the departments that I worked in, we would roll like thousands of joints a day. And it was a very machine line type process. And because there were machines that rolled the joints for you, and then you did various things on them. And then at every step, I kind of figured out how to optimize it. And so when you shave off like 2 seconds for every joint, if you're rolling thousands of joints, it's thousands of seconds, And so you can really cut down your time by like half an hour a day. But what I found was that a lot of employees would not listen. Like, even if I timed the process out and then told people about it and like, hey, if you do this, it'll save you like 3 seconds, they wouldn't listen. And so initially I attributed, when I was younger, I attributed that to like, there's a 40-year-old guy here. He doesn't want to listen to a 22-year-old who's just stepping in and telling him what to do. And then I thought about it more, and I was like, I don't think I was approaching it from the right angle, because I was kind of approaching it from the angle of here are the answers, whereas I think I should have approached the angle. If I were to go back in time, I probably would have approached the angle as like, how can we optimize? Like, what can we as a team do to optimize this better? And I'm just wondering what your thoughts on that, on like how to, because some people are more coachable than others, obviously, but it's definitely a matter of how you're approaching people and like, yeah, how do you help people become more coachable?
So I don't know if you can help someone become more coachable or not, but so in the example that you gave, you were trying to get somebody to change the way they did something because you were trying to optimize a process. And so, if you came to me and said, I've got this problem, I got this, I need to optimize this process, and nobody's, taking it up. The first question I would ask you is, have you demonstrated to them the importance of why the process needs to be optimized or why it needs to be changed? Have you motivated them to understand, why they should do things differently or why they should do anything at all? Because motivation is, if somebody's motivated, if somebody's skilled, so I'm a skilled joint roller, right? Putting myself in this person's shoes, and I'm not making that claim for myself, to be clear, here on the air. But if you've got this skilled, joint roller and you're coming to them and saying, we're going to, do this and we'll shave 2 seconds off of it. And I might think to myself, well, I'm, rolling 1,000 joints a day. So, if I get 6 more out of it, who cares? Right. So you've got to talk to that who cares part of the equation. How does that benefit the company? How does it benefit me? Am I incentivized to roll more joints in a day, or is my incentive the same whether I roll 500 or 1,000? Right. So that's kind of where I would start with that. And I have when I coach managers who are trying to figure out how to get their employees to do what they want, I have a little matrix that I use. So if you think about like a square, like a quadrant, and on the horizontal axis, you put skill. And the further to the right you go, the higher the skill. And on the vertical axis, you put motivation. And so the higher up you go, the higher they're motivated. And then you kind of make that into 4 quadrants. And down here, you have low skill and low motivation. The way you manage that person is very different than this one over here, which is high skill and high motivation. Right. And then over here, of course, you've got low skill, high motivation. This is somebody who wants to learn how to do it. Right. And so the way you interact with them is unique. And then over here, you've got high skill, low motivation. And so, for them to get them to do what you want is a different approach. Right. So this person over here, you're selling. Right. This is why we need to do this. Right. I know you're already really good at doing what you know how to do, but we need to figure out, an efficiency for the company, so that the company can be better.
Yep.
Right. And you've got to sell them on the need for that. So, those are sort of 4 archetypes, and it's, each person in each task, might be in a different thing. Right. So if I came to you and I said, optimize the joint rolling process because we need another 10,000 joints a day, right? Just based on what you told me, I would say that you're probably over here in the high skill, high motivation box because you're already thinking about it, trying to figure it out, and you've got ideas, right? So, I can basically say that to you, walk away. And when I come back, a day later or a week later, I know that you will have worked on it and, maybe come up with some solutions. So I don't have to really micromanage you. This person, low motivation, low skill. Well, first of all, you have to ask yourself why you're giving them that task, right? Because that's probably not going to work out really well. But now let's say if I came back to you and said, hey, I need you to go find us a new source of paper. And you're like, oh, I don't know anything about paper or where it comes from. I don't want to do that, right? So you're suddenly like, I don't have the skill and I'm not motivated, right? So can I move your motivation on that? It's like, look, if you can find us a new supplier, then, we'll save 40% per year on our paper costs. And, we'll put 10% of that in your bonus.
Yeah.
Right. I just moved your motivation. Over
yeah.
Here.
Oh, you sure did. Yeah. I think, this was a few years ago, and I think the company's different now. But I think one of the issues was that I don't know if employees saw a lot of room to grow, especially some employees. And there certainly wasn't a sort of monetary incentive for doing better. And I wonder if you could comment on this, like, if there is no real, this might be a difficult question, but like if there is no real monetary incentive in the short term, or maybe even in the medium term, like the company's still getting off the ground, very competitive industry. Cannabis is notoriously a super competitive industry because you're growing all the same stuff as everyone else is growing, and you're trying to get the cheapest price. And so you're like cutting dollars everywhere you can. And there isn't a lot of profit, especially at the beginning. And still to this day, not a lot of cannabis companies are profitable. So how do you motivate employees?
Is that a legal industry in Australia, I guess, cannabis?
It's becoming more legal. It's medical right now. But this was in the States. I was living in Seattle. So it was as legal as it gets in the US.
Right.
Yeah. But No, I'm not telling you about some illegal escapades online.
Well, no, I wasn't sure because I hadn't heard about Australia and where they were. But Seattle makes perfect sense. I mean, yeah.
No, yeah. We're doing a lot of medical stuff right now. I think it'll slowly become more legal. But yeah, I mean, is there a solid way to motivate employees if you don't have the funds to give them a bonus if they do well?
So yeah, financials are only one way to motivate people. And, it comes down to, good leaders, good managers spend time to get to know who the people on their team are, right? Which I understand could be hard if you've got, 500, manufacturing employees, working under you. So you've got to kind of do what you can there. So you got to adapt to different environments. But, in a small company, in a technology company, most people know at least all their second direct reports, if not everybody in the company altogether. And so you've got to take the time and get to know people a little bit and what motivates them. So software engineers, sometimes, you can motivate them just with the challenge of a problem, right? Say, hey, we're going to set out to do this thing. We don't think it's ever been done before. You're our brightest mind on it. You're our brightest mind for this kind of thing. We want to put you on it. Will you work on it, right? And a lot of engineers will take a challenge because they like to solve problems. Different people are motivated, by different things. There's intellectual challenges. There's social challenges. So something that they do in a lot of sales teams in commodity type selling environments. So, think electronics, cars, things like that, is they have contests, right? And you can do this in manufacturing too. And they do this in manufacturing, and that's, you gamify it and you put up big boards and you show, who has made the most zero defect, joints, or, who has sold the most cars, or, who created the most, upgraded, sales, right? So in the front end, in the retail environment, customer walks in and says, hey, I need a couple pre-rolls. And the person says, oh, that's great. How about a bag of gummies with that? Right. You just added 30%, to the ticket. And so you got to motivate people in different ways. Financials isn't always even the best, right? In fact, once people get to a certain level in Maslow's pyramid, more money means very little. And it's other things, social belonging, peer standing. These things become much more important. So, if you have somebody who you're already paying, $100,000+ a year, an extra $2,000 might not be that meaningful to them, but a public shout out that, they made, a significant contribution to the product that made all the difference for the ability to sell it successfully in the market. That's like a year's worth of loyalty right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have found as well that it seems as if companies that reward the people under them. So like if you're a manager or whatever, and your employee does really well, then if you're the one who says like, oh, my employee just killed it today, they just did something amazing, like that not only helps the employee, but also it helps, I think, the rest of the crew. Like when I was kind of managing teams, and I would tell my HR manager like, oh, my employee did really well today. They were just doing, they came up with this new idea and it saved us money. And then suddenly the HR director is getting good news from your department when all the other departments are giving her bad news. And like, it's just, she might even just associate, you with positivity and like, good fortune rather than, but yeah. And
a well-running organization, right? And that's important too, because then when the next economic downturn comes and the CEO sits down and says, oh, the board just told me we've got to get rid of 15 people. The HR person is going to be like, well, don't touch this team over here, man, because they're performing. They're carrying the company right now. And that may or may not be true, but that's the perception.
So you mentioned that you should get to know your employees and kind of get to know their motivation systems. Now, I know in the military, they seem to do, in some branches of the military, I'm not sure about all, but they seem to do something where they'll have one guy managing like 5 or 6 different guys under him, and then they'll each manage 5 or 6 people under them. Do you think that's, and then, so on and so forth. And so you don't have one guy managing 100 people directly. Do you think that's kind of the best way to?
Yeah, you can't do that. I mean,
yeah.
So it's interesting. So the military is very, very hierarchical, but the American military operates in this weird nexus of command and control and networks, right? And so you've got a very formal chain of command, but when our military is out in the field operating, it's the team on the ground that is in control of this situation. And there was one general that put it really, I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but he put it really well. And it goes, in command, but out of control. And so I think that's a really important concept, especially in larger teams, because there's just no way that you can control 100 people, right? You can't, I don't know. I couldn't anyway, right? It's too much to keep up with, right? But you need to have a plan. You need to set the direction, and you need to be able to communicate that really clearly. But then you should get out of the way, right? Or be there to clear, goals and obstacles. If I'm in there telling individual developers, how to change their code, then there's something very, very wrong with that situation, right? I should be talking about, here's our standard for delivery, right?
I want to go back to something. So before you mentioned that there was like 4 quadrants of employees. So low motivation, low skill, low motivation, high skill, high motivation, and high motivation, low skill. Can you give us a brief rundown of how to treat each of those employees and how to motivate them?
I can. And in fact, there's a blog post on our website about it too. So I'll start at the bottom left, low motivation, low skill employee. So the first thing is, if you're giving a task to somebody, and that combination of that task and that person, right? Because each task, you have to evaluate this, right? So I could give you one task and you could be high skill, high motivation. I give you another task, you could be, high skill, low motivation, or any one of the other ones, right? And I would have to I'd have to communicate with you differently and manage you differently for each one of those tasks, right? Which I think to a lot of managers is sort of initially a foreign concept, because, you're a whole person. Why should I interact with you this way in this case and then that way in that case? And the reason is because you get better outcomes for everybody, as opposed to just taking a blanket approach and calling it done. So low motivation, low skill. The first thing you have to do is ask yourself is, why are you giving this task to this person, right? Do you have any other option available? Because this is really your worst possible choice. And if it is, you don't have any other choices, and that's who you have to work with, then you have to motivate them, right? You have to say and you have to sell them a little bit, right? This is why this is important. This is the contribution it will make to our team. This is the contribution it will make to our company. This is the outcome that we'll create by having this task done. And, kind of really get them to understand what the importance of it is. And then, because it's low skill, and this is true of the one right above it, where you're high motivation, but you're still low skill, is you have to show them how to do that. You have to spell it out for them. They don't know how to do this, right? So you have to basically show them how to do that, or give them a resource that will show them how to do it if you don't know how to do it yourself, or if you don't have the time to do it or something like that. But if you just leave them to flounder with it, it's not going to get done. or it'll get done poorly, or it'll get done wrong. So you have to take them through it, and you have to show them how to do it. You have to be there or have a resource there for them to check in. You have to check in with them every day or two, and check on the progress and guide them in the right direction. And it sounds a little bit like micromanaging, and it is a little bit, but you're not in the negative sense. You're helping the person grow a new skill. And so you're hands-on with them to help them to grow that new skill, right? So really, if you have that low motivation, low skill person, you try to move their motivation up first, and then work with them to grow that skill. If you can't move that motivation up, task isn't going to get done well, no matter what, right? You've just given it to the wrong person. And even if you have nobody else, maybe that's the case where you don't delegate it, you suck it up and do it yourself. This is all about delegation, right? It's really what we're talking about. And I just sort of covered the high skill, low motivation, or I mean the high motivation, low skill scenario where I'm eager to do it. I want to learn how to do it, but I don't know how to do it. You don't really have to motivate me. Yes, I still want to know why it's important for the company, but you don't have to do as much of a sales job on me. It's just like, here's the thing. This is why we need to do it. Here's your resources. I'll check in with you and make sure you have the help you need. Let's get this done inside, the next 3 days or 4 days. Do you think we can, is that possible?
That's high skill, high motivation.
Yeah, that's low skill, high motivation.
Oh, low skill, high motivation. Okay.
Yeah, low skill, right? Because you're checking in with them like every day. Mm-hmm. Here's what you need to do. Here's what I need you to do. First step, do the first step, come back, show me, we'll review it, right? And then go do the second step, right? And you basically walk them through it step by step so that they can onboard the skill.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So then over on the other bottom right part, we've got the high skill, low motivation. And so in this case, you really need to get them to understand why it's important and why you're asking them specifically to do it. Right? Because they might think, you know what, I'm a senior architect. Why do you want me to review this junior person's code? I mean, that's like way below me. Why would I want to do that? Right? And you might think to yourself, well, nobody would ever say that. But yes, somebody has said exactly that to me before. And so you have to motivate them on it. And how you motivate them, again, depends on what you know of that person, and how they will be, what intrinsically will motivate them, right? And, maybe it's somebody before that said, I really want to move on to the management track. And so you can say, okay, look, mentoring junior programmers is the first skill that you really need to onboard if you want to move into management. So I'm giving you this opportunity to work with this person and start by reviewing their code and make them a better programmer. Right. And they're like, oh, okay, so this is how I move to manager. Now I've just motivated that person with this task that they just thought was below them a minute ago. Right. So
Jocko Willink's book, he's got a couple, I forget which one it's from, but he talks about leadership a lot. And he says that low motivation, high skill employees can often be motivated. Sometimes they're just not given enough leadership. And so, because initially people would say, oh, this guy's high skill, low motivation, we should kick him off the team because he's not performing. But another side of that coin, if you find the right sort of person for this, is like, oh no, actually put him in a leadership position where other people are looking up to him and his reputation is now at stake. And so he needs more challenge maybe. But I guess that's maybe in your words, I think you guys, it's interesting. I don't know if you've read his books, but you're mentioning a lot of his tactics actually. So it's a lot of the same leadership tactics, but in this case, it might just be that this guy isn't challenged enough. So he doesn't have enough intellectual challenge. And he's just bored or something like that. He doesn't feel respected.
Yeah, okay. That's very possible. Yeah. Yeah. And then the high skill, high motivation, easy. They're basically set and forget. Hey, this is important to the company. We need it done. When will you have it done? Right? Friday. Okay, great. I'll check in with you Friday. right? And you don't have to do it. So follow up, by the way, with each of these is critically important. If you delegate something to somebody, you ask them to do something, and you don't follow up with them in a couple of days or whatever the timeline for the task is, they're immediately going to believe that even though you told them it was important, it wasn't really. And then the next time you come to them, you're going to have that much harder time, motivating them and selling them on the idea that it's important. So follow up when you delegate is critical. If I give you a task, you say you'll have it done on Wednesday. Wednesday comes and goes. I haven't heard from you. If I don't follow up with you for Thursday morning, you're going to be like, oh, well, I guess it wasn't really that important because I forgot to send it to them. I did it. I forgot to send it before I left, but they're not asking for it. So maybe I'll just sit on it and see if anybody comes looking, asking about it, right? So you got to follow up, and it's important. And it's especially important with people who are learning new skills. If they started a given task with low skill, you've got to repeatedly follow up with them, and how often depends on how complicated the task is and how steep the learning curve for them is and things like that. But follow up is critically important to delegation, even in high skill, high motivation. It's just how often and how you do that follow up changes.
I imagine it's also important to keep high skill, high motivation employees motivated.
Yep. And it'll change, right? So, you might be high skill, high motivation on task A, and low skill, low motivation on task B, right? So my individual task motivations sort of all meld together to form my overall motivation in the workplace. So if I'm a high skill employee and you keep giving me grunt work or busy work, then not only am I not motivated to do that busy work, ultimately I'm going to become unmotivated to work for your company at all because I'm being undervalued. I'm not being given real work that utilizes, my skills and my capabilities. And, unfortunately, I see that a lot. I think that's all over the US workforce. But
one thing I did want to ask you as well, I noticed that you were hiring. Are you still hiring?
We are hiring. We're hiring like crazy. We've been hiring for the last year and a half.
That's a good challenge to have to deal with.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering when you're interviewing people, what stands out for you if you were giving advice to, what positions are you hiring for?
So I would actually have to go look at our website because we just hired 2 people, but I think we're looking for a data engineer, senior software engineer that's full stack. And we're done. We just hired the DevOps person, so we don't need that anymore. So I think those are the 2 positions that we're focused on right now.
Okay. So I can say if you're looking to hire like a great software engineer, or whatever it is, what are you looking for in that employee in the interview?
Yeah. So what I tend to look for tends to be a little different than what our tech leads look for. So our tech leads will dive in and do like really deep technical interviews and like live coding, joint, coding things online and stuff like that. I don't tend to get into stuff with that level with people anymore. What I look for is pretty straightforward. I look for curiosity. You okay over there?
I did this really great thing where I drink and then I inhaled the liquid that I was drinking.
I just figured they put moonshine in your cup and it was a little unexpected.
Oh yeah, moonshine. Moonshine gets the interview going great. It helps lubricate the gears.
The conversation. So I look for curiosity. Curious in our company anyway. If you're not curious, you're probably not going to survive, very long. But I think in general, I like people who are curious. I look for people who have a good problem solving capability. And that's pretty easy to suss out, with a few questions. And you don't even have to ask them hard stuff. You can just ask them about stuff that they've done, and kind of drill down on it a little bit, and how they approach this or that, or kind of what challenges they ran into, and how they dealt with them. And I look for people that I don't really have a good way to say this, and I probably shouldn't even say it, but I look for people who are awake. And I don't mean like woke, when I say that. Although I think we all, that's not the. I mean, it's a good thing that people are getting woke. It's kind of gotten a little memed, but I look for people who are not sleepwalking through their life, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Because I think a lot of people sleepwalk through their life.
I totally agree with that. In terms of, not for employees, but in terms of like people I try to associate with, like there's a track in life that you can go down, and you go to university, and then you do your job, and then you go home and watch Netflix, and you kind of just take the path of least resistance, I think, and you don't necessarily think too deeply or consider your actions, and it makes for a fairly boring person in my estimation, even if they've got a great job, even if they're I
would agree.
Peter Thiel asks his employees, what is one thing that you believe that most of the world does not believe? And I think that might also be a litmus test for being awake.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Maybe I'll try that out.
Do you have an answer for it?
Something, yeah, I do actually.
What is the answer?
So it gets a little weird,
right.
but I believe that the universe, as we think of the universe, which is limited anyway, for all intents and purposes, is alive and conscious.
Yeah. I've been more and more interested in like manifestation. It started a couple years ago when I was reading Think and Grow Rich, and I would write down like what I wanted to achieve, and it ended up that I had just achieved a lot of that stuff, and some of it just kind of comes from nowhere. And if you were an atheist, if you were a very atheistic, like rational type person, you could say, which I do believe as well, that it just gears up your mind. So if you're, especially, I think it works before sleep. Like if you just read, if I would just write like, I will find the love of my life, or whatever it is, and then it kind of gears up your mind to look for those patterns in reality, especially before you go to sleep, because I think your mind, I know my mind processes things as I'm sleeping and comes up with solutions. And so, but if I were to go deeper into it, there's so much of reality that we don't know. Physicists I have this idea of like having 11 dimensions or something. And so that means if I in some way exist in other dimensions that I can't perceive, who's to say that my thoughts do not have ramifications outside of the 3D physical world that we can measure currently? And so,
yeah, let me try to untangle. You said a couple things there that in my way of thinking are a little tangled up. And yes, there are many more dimensions than we can sense and feel or are tangible to us. And that's because most of them are what physicists would call curled up. They're very small, right? So the dimensions that we can inhabit, that we see, we fit within those dimensions in a way that those dimensions are very vast. And the other 6 or 7 or so dimensions are infinitesimally small. And so it's not like we exist also in those other dimensions, but there is a concept of the multiverse. And it is very possible that there are parallels, if you will, in the multiverse. And if that's a matter of dimensionality or not, I don't know. I'm not at that level of cognition. But it's a fascinating idea, right? But also it's the same idea that our universe is only one of potentially trillions of universes, right? And if we think about the idea that our solar system sits in a galaxy, and our galaxy is one of billions, if not trillions, of galaxies, and all of these galaxies make up our universe, which we know is expanding, then what's not to say that there's another one over there that maybe has the identical laws that our universe has, or maybe it has completely different laws than our universe, and that there's not trillions of these universes inhabiting some thing, some space, some vacuum, some bowl, whatever, that we're just not even prepared to comprehend right now in our little tiny human brains.
I guess maybe pointing out the dimensions thing, which I'm severely undereducated about, wasn't the best idea. I guess it was something like we have so little idea of reality that But to go back to this multiverse thing, I read Max Tegmark's book. I've forgotten the name, but a lot of it's about quantum physics. Excellent book. I wish I could remember the name, but essentially, from what I understood, and by the way, I went into this book, and after I read it, I felt like I understood less about quantum physics than I did before I read it. But every time a particle is interacted with by another particle, if you have some things are rotating, I guess quarks or something. Some things are rotating one way, and then every time a particle is interacted with, then it collapses. So there's this idea where something is in a state of spinning one way and spinning the other way, and then when it's interacted with, it kind of has to decide. And there's this idea that every time it decides, it splits into two different universes, and then perhaps these paths diverge. And so this is happening so constantly because every single particle in the universe is constantly splitting into two different divergent paths, which I'm sure that is an oversimplified and wrong explanation of this, but I do wonder. Go on.
No, it's actually pretty good, and I think pretty close. And there was a really famous experiment that's been done and is shown to be repeatable that in fact demonstrates exactly what you're talking about. How this particle collapses to a wave function, and wave functions are probabilistic. And so when it's observed, this particle hits, both targets at the same time, even though it was only afforded, one pathway, or something like that. I forget exactly how the experiment worked, but it basically demonstrated what you just talked about. And it's one of the sort of fundamental, I think, puzzles at the quantum level. And I think quantum physicists now, if you ask one, and it's funny, Einstein said this a long time ago, is that everything that we experience is the result of probabilistic resolution, but it all happened at once, and time is an illusion. And so we're moving on this illusion of unidirectional time and experiencing these probabilities as they collapse. And we're all doing it in a very unique, individualistic way, right? So how I experience an event and how you experience an event could be completely different, even though we were both at the same event, sort of at a macro level, right? And so that's happening all the way down at the quantum level. And it's not until we observe it that it manifests and becomes the reality that we lived.
I want to go back for a second.
I thought this was going to be about entrepreneurship, by the way.
Well, about whatever it's about. I want to go back to what you said before about the universe being alive. Have you had an experience of the universe being alive?
So I spent and I still meditate, but I'm not as much as I used to do. I got really into transcendental meditations and Zen meditation for a while. And when you do that, you get to a place where you can be very still. Like you can really still your mind. You can really quiet your mind. And you can really inhabit your body instead of your head. And when you do that and you get to that place of stillness, there is a presence. And I don't really know how else to say it, but you feel very connected to all things. And my takeaway from those experiences was essentially that we humans, our life forms, all life forms on the planet Earth, all life forms everywhere and anywhere, are simply physical manifestations of the universe experiencing itself.
Yeah, I can agree on that.
So most people freak out and walk away when I say things like that, but
no, that seems perfectly reasonable to me. I think now I'm going to hop back to mine. I'm hopping tracks here constantly, but I think I gave all this sort of scientific jargon, and perhaps what I really meant was that I think faith has an incredible utility that is kind of irreplaceable without it. And so I think one of the reasons why religion and spirituality is so important to people is because it gives us faith that things will work out as we want them to. Like if I'm manifesting money, for instance, and then I immediately, my mind has all these ideas about like, oh, you can't get it because like you know, what if you like try to get money and then you quit your job and then you like lose, you know, you go in debt or whatever. And like, or you have so much debt, how would you ever get out of this hole? You know, and then you feel all these constricting feelings and you feel like you can't make it. But if you can somehow kind of surpass, like override that with or without kind of a spiritual guide, and just focus on like, I am going to get this. And it's already happened in a way. Like there's this Talking Heads song, and one of the lyrics is, "The future is certain, give us time to work it out." And I really like that line because it's like, oh, it's already happened in a way. Time will just figure it out for me. And I will figure it out. It's not like I'm just going to try to manifest lottery tickets. Like, I don't think that's how it works. But right, yeah, I do think that that's been very helpful for me. And I wonder if you do have the same experience with like when you went into these business ventures, like, I wonder if you had that same attitude of like just kind of certainty that it was going to work out, or did you, how did?
So you have to be an eternal optimist to be an entrepreneur. If you're not an optimist, don't start a company because it's going to be really hard. You have to believe. I mean, you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in the vision. You have to believe in what you're doing. I can't tell you how many times I sat up at 2:00 in the morning on Friday. It was, you know, starting probably 10 o'clock Thursday night, grinding through the night, trying to figure out how I was going to make payroll the next morning. You know, it's you. And if you're a pessimist, you know, if you don't believe in what you're doing, if you don't believe in yourself, you don't, you know, it's just, you're going to give up, right? Or you're going to crash and burn, or, you know, lots of things that are not good outcomes for anybody. So you know, you go into things believing in yourself and other things like that. That doesn't mean you don't have times of self-doubt. But I'll tell you, when I started my first company, I didn't have any of the philosophy, any of the experience that I have now. And I literally just bulldogged my way through it. I mean, you just, right, you know, you just burn, and you just pull out all the stops and do what needs to be done. But, you know, it's interesting, like the whole concept of, and I'll be honest with you, I struggle a little bit with the concept of manifesting, but mostly because of that book, The Secret, which I think is, have you not heard of that?
I haven't read it. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't read it. It does people it takes some valid ideas and it casts them in a very materialistic way, and basically convinces the goal of the book, I think, is essentially to convince you if you tape $1 million bill to your TV monitor that money will start arriving in the mail.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's not how it works. That's, so I struggle with the concept of manifesting a little bit, but I think it is true that, when you write down your goals, you write down what you want to accomplish, you instantly, by an order of magnitude, improve the chances that you're going to accomplish it. And there's all kinds of things in that. You mentioned atheists before will say, well, that's just psychology, but there is a psychology aspect to it, right? There's also a clarity aspect to it, because once you start writing down your goal, if you're doing it, if you're really writing it down, you start thinking about it, you start refining it, you start planning on how you're going to get it, right? On how you're going to get there, and it's self-activating, and then you start talking to people about it. And sure, there will be the people that are like, oh, you're wasting your time, don't do that. 10 other companies tried that already, or who are you to do that? So there's this woman on LinkedIn right now, Stephanie Stuckey. I don't know if you've seen her at all. Are you familiar with Stuckey's, the old road trip gas station pecan log roll store that was here in the US now? So anyway, she bought this company from some PE firm or something. Her grandfather started the company. It was driven into the ground. She's basically, turning this thing around from the ground up. She's put it out on social media, what she's doing, and right in the public view, people are coming out of the woodwork to help her resuscitate this old junk food kitsch store brand. Stephanie, if you watch this, I'm sorry to say that like that, but that's, and it's being very successful. Like, she's turning this company around, and people are coming out of the woodwork to support her and to help her. Like, some of it's emotional support, but people are buying, the products. People are offering to help in other ways. I've seen people talk about, how can I invest in this? I mean, so when you put the whole point of that is, when you start talking to other people about what you want to accomplish, there will be as many, if not more, people that come literally out of the blue, out of nowhere, to help you, as there are naysayers or people that tell you, don't do it, you can't do it, you shouldn't do it, and so it's really kind of amazing. And I think that gets into the whole, thing about, manifesting too, which is you've got to put your ideas out for other people to help you. If you keep it inside, if you keep it a secret, you don't tell anybody, then nobody can help you with it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, she could, I don't know how she's marketing it, but it seems to me like she could sell a dream almost. Like, she kind of owns this piece of Americana.
She does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I can see why so many people would want to flock to it. Like, oh, let's help an American business. Like, that's old timey and kind of reminds us of our grandparents. Like, it's not like a BP gas station or whatever. It's like this. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So I have to ask, did you grow up in Australia or did you grow up in the US?
I lived in the US till I was 5, and then at 7 years, 5 to like 7 or something, I moved to Costa Rica, and then Australia. So Sydney, Newcastle, 2 hours north of Sydney, and then I'll just tell you the whole story. Melbourne for university, which is a great city, super fun city. And then at 22, I went to Vancouver, Canada, Seattle, and then came back. So
Okay.
at 24, 4 or 5, I came back.
Cool.
Yeah. So I've always had the accent. It's just like, whatever. Everyone thinks I'm like a tourist, but yeah, I've spent more time in Australia than I have in the States.
That's funny. And so where were you in Costa Rica? Were you on the West Coast or the East Coast or in the middle?
Near San Jose.
Okay, nice.
But I remember very little of it. I don't speak Spanish,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Costa
Yeah,
Rica is a gorgeous place.
Yeah, I remember the wildlife. I saw some really incredible wildlife there, like the jungles, and yeah, it was an interesting place, especially as a kid, because it was also interesting to see at such a young age, like the poverty there, and yeah, how there would be like 10 people living in a shack, like a corrugated iron shack, and our housekeeper, who we kind of like, you kind of you feel like you have to hire housekeepers because you're actually just employing local people, and like we never had a housekeeper since, but like you just do it because this lady was supported, her parents weren't around for some reason, and she supported like 9 of her siblings on this one income, and so I think it was good as a kid to get that perspective on life as well.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, and Australia's a great country. I love it. Have you been?
Yeah. So I've been to Brisbane, and I went scuba diving out at Lady Elliot Island, which was really, really amazing. And Brisbane is a totally fun city. Absolutely loved it there.
Yeah. Super warm, like warm water. Oh, like almost all year round. The water is great. Yeah, it's nice. And the scuba diving in Australia is incredible. I've only been a few times, but like, oh my God, it's a different world. And it's a world that humans aren't really supposed to see.
It kind of feels like that, right? You're down there seeing stuff, and you just know that, like, you're the only 2 or 3 humans, or however many people are in your diving group, that will ever see this exact moment. Like, these 4 fish, that nurse shark and this turtle, and, these things, all right there. And they'll never do that again. Right. And so it's just, I don't know, it is. You feel like an interloper, but it is just so, it's also very peaceful.
That sounds like a very meditative thought to me. Because that's true for anything, isn't it? Like every moment is so unique. And I wonder how has meditation helped you to get where you are? Why did you get so into it?
Because I was burning myself out crazy. It's actually funny. So somebody that I used to know a long time ago recommended, he had just read a book, and he recommended the book to me. It's called The Power of Now.
Yep.
You're familiar with it. And so I read that book, and I was just like, well, this is like a completely different way to think. And I was at a place where I really didn't have anything else to lose. So I gave it a try, and that's kind of what got me started on the meditation track. But, I tend to kind of evolve from, if I read something, if I learn something by reading, I'll try to evolve it. My partner, actually, she laughs because I cook that way too. And so the first time I ever make something, maybe I'll use a recipe, or at least I'll look at the recipe first. But the joke in our house is, if I make something and you like it, or if I make something and you don't like it, the good news is you'll never have it again. Bad news is, if you like it, you'll never have it again.
Yeah.
Because my recipes tend to just evolve as I guess based on mood or whatever. But I tend to do that with most things. I take ideas, I take thoughts, I put them into practice, and I evolve them. And so I got my start with The Power of Now, but just kind of moved on from there, and really got into I think being present is important. That was probably one of the big number one things I took away from that and kind of changed how I even do things interpersonally. Because how many people do you know that you have a conversation with them like this, right? And every now and then they look up and they're like, That's not really present, right? And so if you can be fully present for somebody, well, so first of all, let me tell you, lesson learned for me. When you're a 50-something-year-old guy and you're fully present for a 30-year-old woman out in a social setting, she thinks you like her.
Yep.
Because she has never experienced a guy being fully present before. And I think it probably would work the other way around too, right? But I only have my own personal experience to draw on there. When you're fully present with somebody you already know that's a friend or a colleague or an employee, they sense it and they really appreciate it, quite a lot. And that's the same for, if you have a partner or a spouse or, anything like that, being fully present for them in a conversation is a game changer.
Yeah. Fully present for me oftentimes means, well, if you think about how your mind works, you can only really pay attention to one thing at a time. And oftentimes your awareness moves from visual to auditory to, like, if I'm playing with something, like the tactile. And and so it is kind of constantly switching, but we don't notice it because it's kind of the default. And so present for me means like focusing completely on someone, and then obviously, for me at least, thoughts will pop up, and then like just kind of letting them disappear, not fighting them too much, and then focusing on a specific person. And oftentimes I'll find that when that happens, a thought will pop up, and then I'll notice, like, I'll let thoughts kind of go down again. But at the end of the conversation, like, I would say the most pressing thought or the most important thought will kind of naturally come up anyway, and it will allow me to guide the next part of the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, we're always going to have thoughts popping up in our head. And so being fully present doesn't mean that you have to control those. I like the way that you put it, is you let them come up and fade away, and they'll resurface at the right time. But, it's really about not thinking, when I'm talking to you, for example, I'm not thinking about changing out the laundry. I'm not thinking about my next meeting. I'm not thinking about the conversation that I just had that maybe didn't go the way that I want, right? Those things might be out there, but those are compartmentalized. I'm here, I'm present for this conversation. And a lot of people don't do that. They'll sit there and think about, whatever is going on in their head, versus focusing on what the person they're talking to is saying. And here's a really good example of that. Now that the world lives in Zoom, and everybody's on Zoom meetings, and they're not in meetings in-person meetings anymore. You get on a Zoom call, there's 8 people on the call, nobody has their camera turned on. How many people are actually paying attention to the meeting? Right? How many people are present for the meeting versus writing an email in the background, right? Or, scrolling through Facebook or LinkedIn, looking up the other people in the meeting that they don't know, right? Or thinking about, when is it going to be my time to make this point that I came to this meeting to make, right? Versus listening and actually being present. And I think it's just too common of a social ill, I think, in today's world. And it's bad. When I do team restructuring, team rebuilding exercises, there's one that we do that makes the point about being present for your team. And it's especially bad, I think, in software companies, because there's so much work to do, right? People come together for a meeting and they're busily cramming away on their laptops in the meeting, trying to get done their work while the meeting's going on. And then somebody says, So, Serena, what's your update on that? And you're suddenly like, what are we talking about? Can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. My mind wandered for a second. No, it didn't. You haven't paid attention for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And you heard your name. And so it's an interesting thing, the way our brains work. So you mentioned, that our brains are constantly like switching context, right? And that's true because we have a background process that listens for our name, right? So you can sit through 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes of a meeting, miss absolutely everything that was said, and somebody will say your name, and suddenly your attention is back onto that meeting, right? It's like the Alexis, trigger word, right? You're kind of listening, but you're not processing it. But as soon as somebody says your name, you're like, oh yeah, how can I help you?
Yep. Yeah. And software is one of those industries as well, on top of that doesn't necessarily prioritize employees or people or incentivize people to be really engaged with other people. I mean, you can kind of just get away with like being on your computer 24/7 and it's like coding is a different kind of language in your brain. Like when you're coding, I don't think it's like switching processes. Like you're not exactly thinking in words oftentimes when you're coding. Like it's a different
thinking in logic and math. But what's interesting about that is when an engineer, when a programmer, coder, call them what you want, is writing code, they are fully present for that code. They are 100% there, focused on what they are doing. And this is where the state of flow arises from. You can get in the state of flow with another person. A lot of people think of the state of flow as a very individual thing. I can get into it when I'm writing. I can get into it when I'm playing my guitar. I can get into it when I'm meditating, right? Can you get into a state of flow when you're in a conversation with somebody? You absolutely can. Think about it. You ever had a conversation with somebody and you look up and an hour is gone and you thought, oh my God, I thought I'd been here for 5 minutes. You got into flow with them. And that means you were present in that conversation with them. You were present with them and for them and them for you. And that's a magical thing when it happens. It's too bad it doesn't happen more in the world.
When I'm playing guitar, it's like it's flow, but it's the reverse of I have all these thoughts and all this kind of processing that I do, and then I look up and I think it's been like half an hour and it's been 5 minutes. Like it's just time like slows down dramatically, and it's like I don't know if my thoughts are faster, or if it's just that perception, but I want to know.
Interesting. So what kind of stuff do you think about when you're playing guitar?
I think there's a lot of background processing that happens, maybe emotional. I certainly I don't have a big music theory background, and so a lot of my playing guitar is like it's almost like different frets are lighted up, and then I'm kind of thinking in shapes in this weird way. You can understand, I'm sure. And and then whatever I'm playing, I think there's an emotional resonance that goes with that maybe is however that emotion resonates to my life. Maybe there's some processing going on, which I think is why I have this question of like, why do I like sad music? I mean, I like other music too, but why do I listen to sad music? Like, why would I want to make myself sad? And I think part of it is that there's this going into that depth and allowing myself to feel those feelings in order to like clear them out and maybe see the beauty in them.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know about your music. So you have this beautiful collection of guitars. I'm a huge fan of them, and all that soundproofing, or I guess reverb blocking type of stuff.
Yeah. So I actually built a full studio in my basement, and you can just see the tiny little part of it. But there's a couch over there. There's a drum set in a little alcove over there. There's amplifiers on the back, and there's more guitars in a closet, and there's stuff all over the place. And the desk that I'm sitting at actually has all the recording units, and there's a big console here, and all the things. So yeah.
How long have you been playing?
Since I was about 10 or 11 years old or so.
Yeah. Same. That's when I picked it up seriously. Yeah.
Yeah.
What you're in a band? What's it called?
So right now, so this is a new project. This band. So we've been rehearsing a bunch of new songs. And right now, our working name for the band is A Little Bit Broken.
Cool. I like that. What draws you into music so much? Why has it been such a constant in your life?
It is an emotional sink, a creative outlet. I don't know. I've always felt connected to music. I was the geek in the 7th and 8th grade band, played trumpet. I was in the marching band. I was in the concert band. All the things that get you punched in the band room in high school. Total nerd. But I didn't care. I mean, and we had a piano, his old piano in the house, and my mom got me a guitar for Christmas one year, and I've just always been attracted to music. And I can pick up most instruments pretty quickly. So, I can play a lot of different things. Not well, but I can play a lot of different things.
Yeah. Got to be able to play one thing well.
Yeah, that's the guitar. I play the guitar very well.
Do you do any, do you do much on the production side of things?
Yeah, I do. So I have obviously the whole production capability here. Anything, if you go out and listen on Apple Music or Spotify or anything that I put out there, that was all made right here, was all produced right here. There's one song in particular that's more production, more producer type stuff, I guess in the vernacular of the kids. It's got beats.
What's it called?
That one is, what is that one called? That one, I put that one out a couple of years ago. That one is called, that's pretty bad. All
right. I forget my stuff too.
I can't even remember the name of my own song now that I put out. Makes Me Numb.
Yeah.
Makes Me Numb.
And what's the artist? How can people find that? What's the band name?
It's just my name. It's Frank Oelschlager.
Cool.
Yeah, good luck spelling it, but you can find me out there like that. So if you like sad songs, you might like Makes Me Numb. It's a pretty sad song. I process a lot of things in my songs, so they're poignant.
Good. Yeah. I'm currently producing a song, and I'm just in this place where it seems to be taking me forever. And part of that is because I'm getting better and better at producing. And so like a year ago, I've just gained so much in a year. Like I'm way more confident. And a lot of that is just that I'm watching a ton of tutorials and I'm learning. But yeah, a lot of my songs seem to take a very long time, and I seem to have a lot of unfinished songs that I really love and I really would like to get out there. Do you have any tips for getting stuff out there and not getting stuck in the music writing process or in the creative process in general?
I don't know if I have anything useful to say. I probably have 100 unfinished songs right now. Some of them will never get finished. They get stuck. Sometimes they just have nowhere to go. Sometimes I'll come back after several years and pick up a thread. I just did that with a song a couple of weeks ago. It was like the song really just sat stuck for a long time. And then suddenly like a new verse came to me and I was like, oh yeah, that's the song, right? And I was like, I don't know where that came from, but there it was. So I think this is going to sound just so boring and droll, but it's carve out time and just do it every day. Right. Pick out, set a goal, what you want to accomplish. Like, so sometimes I'll sit down and I'll be like, okay, we tracked this song. Now I need to, go through and, do the EQ and, try to figure out where do we need, a fill, is this good? Do I want to use this guitar piece or that guitar piece? And, oh, what if I added a little reverb here, and, things like that. So I'll try to carve out a session with goals to do. And then, in terms of done, when is done? It's just a feeling I get when I listen to it, and I'll be like, okay, this is it. This is the song. This is how it goes. This is what the song wants to be. I'm very much a believer that I'm a conduit for the song more than it's a creator. So you got to listen to what the song wants. It sounds weird, but
no, I totally get it. Yeah, it feels like that for me. It feels like I've had this experience of like feeling as if I'm a different person playing through me or something. Yeah, it's very, very strange.
Yeah. But I mean, just songs will fall out of the air. Lyrics will fall out of the air. Riffs will fall out of the air. And if I try to like really say, okay, I'm going to write something, right? I'm going to make something from scratch. And I can sit around for half an hour and not accomplish anything. But if I open myself up to what's there, things can usually go pretty quick.
Playing with other people is really important for me too, because it does feel like there's this meshing and this dance of two different energies or whatever you want to call it. And they produce something together that either one of us wouldn't have produced ourselves.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny you say I'm doing right now with the band that I put together. We practice on Sundays. We're all, we all have day jobs, we're all, doing professional, kind of work. And so we've carved out Sunday afternoons and we get together, and our goal is to get, through 2 songs each Sunday. And we don't always accomplish that. Today we did, but the first song that we started working with, by the end of today had really evolved because of the group contribution, right? The group dynamic that arose out of it. And the song is much, much better for it. Like if I sat down here by myself and did it, it would have been probably very close to exactly the same as the way I conceived it, right? And now it's a better song for having had 3 other people have put, input into it as a result of learning it and playing it with them. And by the way, I got to say, it's a trip and an honor that other people want to come together and play songs that I wrote. I mean, that it's like, what do you mean you like that song enough to learn it and play it in public?
Yeah. I like that gratitude mentality too. It's that gets you far. That yeah. It seems like it's a natural thing for you. For me, learning, is there anything that like you think really helped you level up your musical ability in any way? For me, for instance, when I learned this circle of fifths, it was just, it was like, oh my God, of course. If you're a musician, check out the circle of fifths if you don't know it. But like, it doesn't need to be something theoretical or whatever, but is there anything that really helped you like get way better?
Playing solo in public. Take your guitar and a microphone and go play in front of a bunch of people in a bar. That will make you instantly better every time you do it.
All right. I don't do that enough. I've only done that a handful of times. I think that's probably the best advice I could have heard.
Yeah. So are you going to do like a little musical production piece to put at the front of your, can you call this a podcast? Because it's a video, right? Is it still a podcast? I mean, is it a video podcast?
I think video podcasts are.
Yeah, video podcast. So you're going to have like a little musical intro to your video
That's a good
podcast?
question. So I am currently working on, so like I've been thinking about how to optimize my podcast, how to make it better. And I was just on this track of like, oh, just get it out there, you know, it'll get better. And it is getting better as it goes. But the biggest piece of low hanging fruit right now is that I don't have an intro with a song. And so, but I'm set on writing my own song. And since you've said that, I could like wait on this one a little bit longer, and then you could be the first one that has an intro. Yeah, I could probably write one fairly quickly if I gave myself the time and just kind of the constraints to do it. And then I have a friend.
You need 20 seconds, maybe only 15 seconds.
Yeah, I'm thinking like 5 seconds, really. I don't think it needs to be super long, or maybe 10, because in the skip function on YouTube, it like goes 10 seconds immediately, and people sometimes don't want to listen to the so it might be a 10 second thing. Yeah, you're right. And it's like I could do guitar, I could make it electronic. I'm trying to figure out what my style, like the biggest thing on my mind is what style of music reflects my podcast, reflects me. It's a very personal decision. Yeah. I have a friend who I want to make some art for me. So I'll see how that goes too.
What do you use for your DAW?
FL Studio.
FL Studio? Okay.
Yeah. It's the only one I've tried. And I loved it. The visuals are great. And it's actually you buy it and you get free upgrades for life on whatever package you're part of. So like, so I just thought that was a great move by the company. That's why I made the decision. How about you?
Yeah, cool. I use Logic Pro from Apple because I'm on the Mac platform.
Oh yeah. I think I've heard that they have little idiosyncrasies, but pretty much you can do whatever you want on any of them.
So this comment will get me an instant flame fest from all producers that ever watch this video, but a DAW is basically a tape recorder on your computer.
Yeah. Well, it's got a lot of other things in it, but yeah. A very expensive tape recorder. A muddy pit of a tape recorder. You just keep buying things. Yeah. It's the inspiration that matters. And the work ethic. Yeah. Watching tutorials, watching videos has like helped me a lot. Treating it like a job. Oh, getting back to goal setting, I'm naturally a very scattered person. And so I have so many ideas and like so many things that I'm working on, but getting to like the goal settings, it actually writing down all the goals I want and writing down 15 goals. It's like, oh, this isn't like, I can have faith and I can be positive, but like, and actually having a calendar and like planning out my whole day. It's like, oh, I actually don't have time for 15 different goals here. Like I have time for 2 goals, in terms of like, so my 2 goals are like a podcast and music production. And that's all I have time for. And I was even doing like solo videos on this channel before. And I was just like, that's like, it's scattering my energy too much. I'm not focusing on getting like better and better, guests like yourself, because I'm doing all this other stuff. And so for me, just single-minded focus and treating it like a job and listening to the tutorials and all that stuff has been really really useful.
Yeah, treating it like a job is a critical piece, and that's really for anything that you set out to do. You have to carve out time for it. You have to be accountable for it, or it's not going to happen.
What's your time management system like?
So, it's evolved over time, but so I get up pretty early in the morning. And so I also, so you're going to laugh, but my time management is driven by my goals. And I have both some short-term goals and some long-term goals. And you can also think of those as kind of like also point goals and process goals. So
what was the first one? Sorry, what goals and process goals?
Point goals and process goals. So a point goal is something you complete in a point in time, right? So a point goal might be a weight loss goal, right? Say, I want to weigh 200 pounds. And once I weigh 200 pounds, that goal is accomplished, right? A process goal might be, I want to continuously improve my musicianship on the guitar, or, maybe I continuously want to improve, my, production skills, right? There's no end point there, right? You have to be really good at knowing where you are and what your next step is, and where you want to go and how you want to evolve, that kind of skill. And I think it's important to have a mix of both of those kinds of goals. And I have a whole system for the goals, but so this year, I wanted to learn Spanish. And so I got the Duolingo app. And so I get up at 5 a.m, unfortunately, and I make an espresso, and I spend 20 minutes learning Spanish, right? And then one of my other goals is around health and fitness. And by the way, all my goals are driven from my core values, or in alignment with them. I should say they're not necessarily driven with them. And so being fit and healthy is important to me as a person. And I did a bad thing during COVID. I ate too much, I drank too much, and I didn't work out enough, right? Some people went the other way, but that's what I did. And so this year for 2022, I set a goal to get back to my fighting weight. But more importantly for me, is to be fit. And that's measured in, things like, blood pressure, resting heart rate variability, and things like that. You've got to have a way to measure your goals, right? And so I spend an hour every morning, doing a cardiovascular workout and a fitness strength, workout. I'm getting to the age where, men need to worry about muscle loss. And so, I've, started lifting heavier again to make sure that I can keep my strength.
Yeah.
Right. It's important. It's important to me. It's not important to everybody. But it's important to me. And, I lost sight of that for a while. So I had to come back to it. So my time management is, based around my goals. Another one of my goals is to grow my company 10 Mile Square. We're doing a good job of that. And so a portion of my day is dedicated to networking and, business development, kind of activities. Portion of my day is dedicated to following up with, current clients. If I have anything going on with them, some of it's, dedicated to following up with, former clients just to check in and see how they're doing, and things like that, because keeping the network strong is very important. But also, I tend to form very deep relationships with my clients based on the nature of the work that I do. So I care about what happens to them after I'm done with whatever project that we've completed. A lot of my time during the workday is actually this is sort of interesting, because I used to do this thing called calendar blocking, where I would block out large sections of time for me. And I think that can work in a lot of contexts. It's actually a good practice. A lot of people have written about it. But what I found is that in my business, what I needed was to have blocks of availability available for my clients to book time with me. And so I signed up for this service called Calendly. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. And I put my Calendly link out to all my clients. Now if they need a one-on-one coaching session, or, they have a problem they need help with solving, or, even they want to talk about, spinning up a new project or something like that, they can book on my calendar directly, anytime in any of the big blocks that I put out on my, Calendly, calendar for them to use. And so I get driven asynchronously for a good bit of my day during those blocks of time. And at first I thought I would hate that, but it works really well, and I've adapted. And so I manage my time around that. And the things that are really important to me, I do before those blocks of time begin in the morning.
That makes a lot of sense. allowing your customers to establish like a better one-on-one relationship with you seems, and without having such rigid constraints, I would say, sounds like a great idea.
And nobody likes to do I need a 50-minute conversation with you. When are you available? Dance and email back and forth 3 times. You could have had the conversation by now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Back to the exercise thing, because that's also, I've noticed like how much it changes my life when I'm exercising regularly. Did you notice any were you paying attention, and did you notice a difference in your like moods or mental health from when you were not exercising as much compared to now when you are exercising more?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have more energy, and this won't surprise you based on our earlier conversations, but I finished my workout with a 5-minute meditation session. I mean, nothing too crazy, but just to kind of, refocus and center myself and stop breathing hard. I come out much more centered, much more grounded. I find that if somebody throws a challenge at me first thing in the day, then I'm not just like, it's just like, okay, what do we got? So I think it definitely has a big difference. Mentally, internally, it has a big difference for me. I feel better about myself. When I wasn't working out, when I was putting on weight, when I was drinking too much, I did not feel as good about myself, and I didn't know it at the time. I was just thought, this is just, I'm just going through life being me. But once I got back on the workout train and got really focused around my goals, I realized in hindsight that I wasn't feeling that great about myself, and because now I am, and I sense that difference. Right. Sort of like even like how you walk down the street, right? I feel like I sit up a little straighter or stand up taller,
I found my work ethic improves enormously when I work out. I can pay attention a lot longer and maybe enter into flow more. I'm not sure about that, but I can certainly work for longer periods of time.
Yeah.
It might be the biggest for me. I'm going to wrap up. Before we do, I want to ask you, is there a book that you would recommend that you wish everyone in the world would read, or you think most people should read?
So can I answer that in 2 ways?
Yes.
So I will say everyone in business, anyone who's running a business, has responsibility for any other person or a company or anything like that, especially in the technology industry or any kind of growth company, has got to read The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. It is probably the single best business leadership book I have ever read. And the reason is because he doesn't talk incessantly about success mode. He talks about all the shit that came along and messed him up, and the emotional turmoil that he went through to try to deal with it, and the lessons that he learned from that. Right. And it's an amazing, I learned a lot from just reading that book. And I think I've learned very little from reading almost every other management book. There's probably 4,000 management books in print right now. I just made that number. I have no idea how many there really are. And they all say the same 7 things in different ways. Ben Horowitz actually says something new and different and meaningful and useful. So I think that's good. In terms of books that I think every human should read, that's a hard one. There's so many good books out there. I'm just going to stick with the business book everybody should read.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Hey, thank you so much for coming on. I've appreciated this conversation so much.
Yeah. I can't believe we're at 2 hours already.
Yeah. It took some turns that I wasn't expecting, but I was pleasantly surprised.
Same. I thought I was going to be like all talking about like startups and growth, growing SaaS companies and, stuff like that. But no, this was great. So when should I expect to see something come out of this?
I'm going to give it a week. I don't upload on a schedule. I guess one of my biggest weaknesses is like organization at the moment, which is getting better because I'm focusing on the podcast so much, but trying to stick to schedules somehow made me upload less. And so I was like, all right, don't make yourself stick to a schedule for now. Just get stuff out there. And and so I'm of the opinion that for me, what works best is just to do an MVP and like just to upload the bare minimum and get that out there and then just slowly optimize. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. But I think about a week. If I give it a week, that also gives me a hard deadline to make an intro. So that might be the best way to go for me.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So just let me know when you put it out.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope I see you around sometime.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll see you on the Trends group, but feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or even on Facebook if that's where you prefer. I'm pretty open that way. So
great.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. All right. Bye.
Bye.